Amari Cooper has been traded to the Dallas Cowboys. Dilly Vanilli's Dallas Cowboys. Amari Cooper is headed to the Cowboys. There was rumors, there was speculation about Amari Cooper potentially being traded. He wasn't getting along with John Gruden, not getting the targets from Derek Carr, very much struggling in Oakland. Really over the past 2 years, I know he had the stats last year, but this year, not the stats for sure, and really just inconsistent from week to week. You never knew what you were going to get from him, but hopefully in a new situation, the Dallas Cowboys can make the most of it. But then we heard what it was for, Dilly Vanilli. They got Amari Cooper for not a second, not a third, not a fourth. Josh Gordon was traded for a fifth, which I'm sure we'll bring up. Amari Cooper went for a first-round pick, which was the equivalent of Brandon Cooks this past offseason. Dylan, you are the Dallas Cowboys fan. So how do you feel about Amari Cooper heading over to Dallas?
All right, well, I've had a little bit of time to absorb this because it happened about 2:30 Central, and it's now 11 o'clock. Remember when we were on stream a couple weeks ago, and this question was brought up as a rumor, and I said, I don't want Amari Cooper here for a first-round pick.
You did say that, and why did you say that?
Because the inconsistency of Amari Cooper was not worth the first-round pick. Okay? I'm going to go through a couple of positives and negatives that I see out of here. The obvious negative is we're giving up a first-round pick. If you're giving up a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, why didn't we go for a second-round pick to Earl Thomas, which is what the Seahawks wanted? And if we wanted to go for a receiver, why not go for Josh Gordon, like you brought up, who was given for a fifth-round pick? I think there's, I don't know if the Dallas Cowboys know math very much. I don't know if my team knows math, but a second or a fifth-round pick is a little bit farther back in the draft than a first. I just don't know if they know that, because those are two better talents than Amari Cooper right now. Josh Gordon has succeeded in the New England Patriots system, and he would have succeeded in the Dallas Cowboys system, and he's a great talent when he's healthy. Earl Thomas, this was before the injury, they wanted a second-round pick, would have gotten the job done and would have helped out our secondary. Amari Cooper has had so many games over the course of the last 2 seasons where he hasn't even gotten over 20 yards. 20. As a receiver, you think you would pick up more yards consistently. If you have one bad game, it happens. But if you consistently do that, how can I trust you in getting you for this kind of potential? I mean, I just don't see it in that aspect. But there are a couple of good things to see, in my opinion, from the Amari Cooper trade. First off, Amari Cooper's coming in on a bye week, which means he was already on a bye week from the Oakland last week. He's going to get another week to train with the Cowboys and get in the system, and then he's going to play Monday night against the Titans. We're going to see in prime time if he's worth getting, being in the system in game 1. Second thing, he's still pretty young. He's only 6 months older than Calvin Ridley, who was a first-round draft pick this year. So he's still got a lot of
24 years old.
24 years old. That's pretty young, all things considered, in this situation. I'm trying to get that stat there for the 20-yard comparison. Okay, here we go. Amari Cooper has recorded 20 or more yards in 4 of his last 10 games. More than 20 yards in 4 of his last 10. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Derek Carr will get you the ball enough to have more than 20 yards. I guarantee you that, even if he is struggling. But he's still got a lot of youth to him. 24 years old, like I said, 6 months younger or older than Calvin Ridley. He still has talent. I've seen flashes of him. We saw what he could do in Alabama. We saw his first great season. And the biggest thing for me is that the Cowboys offense has always been, especially Jerry Jones, to the media, that we don't have a number 1 receiver. That we just don't have that guy to get us down the field, which, A, that's a complete lie because we had Des Bryant. But, B, you now don't have that excuse. You have Amari Cooper as your number 1 receiver, and we're really going to see if Dak can tell the world that he knows how to use a number 1 receiver, because that has been the biggest excuse. Cole Beasley's had great games, but we can't rely on him as the number 1 guy in Dallas. Amari Cooper is looked at as this guy since we gave up this much for him. A first-round pick is quite a bit. So I don't like that we gave up a first-round pick. I think it was way too much of a reach. But then again, I've still got to give him the opportunity to prove me wrong, because at the end of the day, if I'm just going to talk crap about it and not give it a chance, I'm not really helping out to the Dallas organization. So I have to give it a chance. I'm just very cautious of this scenario because we're 3-4 and we're giving up this kind of play where we could go get a first-round pick that's highly necessary to this team. That's my opinion on it.
All right. Well, for me, you look at Amari Cooper this year, he's had 2 games over 100 yards at the Denver Broncos and against the Cleveland Browns. In both of those games, he had 10 and 12 targets. For some reason in the other games, he had 3 targets in the first game where he had 1 catch for 9 yards against the Rams. The third game, 2 catches for 17 on 5 targets when they were still trying to get him in the offense. The fourth game, he had over 100 yards. The fifth game, 1 catch at 10 yards. Right after that fifth game, we saw sort of the rumors start that Amari Cooper could be on the trade block. John Gruden was thinking about trading him. The main things I've heard about Amari Cooper and the reason why the Raiders wanted to trade him was, one, the biggest reason, they feel like Amari Cooper is not committed to the Raiders and he's not committed to football, and they feel like he does not love the sport of football and he's not fully invested. The second reason is that they think he's overrated and he does not really get off press very well and is not great against physical corners at the line of scrimmage. So those were the 2 biggest things I heard about Amari Cooper and the 2 biggest flaws. Now, what do I think about those flaws? I think it has to be something said. Even the most talented of receivers, despite, even if they have down games, they always seem to bounce back. They always seem to get more targets, and they'll fight their way through adversity. And with Amari Cooper, it doesn't seem like he's willing to do that. Maybe he is a little bit mentally weak in terms of confidence level, just his belief in his ability. And the second thing, in terms of separation and getting off the line, I mean, I could definitely see it because he's had a lot of games throughout his career when he's not facing a mediocre to bad defense. He doesn't really do very well. When he plays good corners, he just seems to disappear. So I'm not sure. I always credited that because he's young. He's just developing. But he's 3 years into the league. I know he's still only 24. But there is concern there with that. Do I think that the Cowboys are getting a receiver worth a first-round pick? No. Do I think the Cowboys will get better at the receiver position because they have Amari Cooper? Yes. Was Amari Cooper worth a first-round pick? No. Because when you look at the past wide receiver trades, not a lot of receivers are traded for first-round picks. I mean, Brandon Cooks has just been traded basically for 2 first-round picks. He was traded last year to the Patriots for a first-round pick, and he was traded this year to the Rams for a first-round pick. Both were 20+. So the Cowboys, to make it near Brandon Cooks' value, would have to be would have to basically make it in the playoffs at some point, and make it to the playoffs and basically trade it for that. And I don't even think Cooper has justified that he's as good or better than Brandon Cooks. I think we all think that Brandon Cooks is better than Amari Cooper, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just seems like when players, I know that this is a different situation, but Josh Gordon getting traded for a 5th-round pick, and we know the talent of Josh Gordon, despite all the issues, goes for a 5th. And we've seen receivers in the past go for 6th and 4ths. And there's not a lot of receivers we've seen go for 2nds even. Or, it does not really happen very often. So for a receiver of Amari Cooper, I understand he's young, but to go for a first-round pick, I think overall the Raiders won the trade. But that's not to say that Amari Cooper couldn't turn his career around, because we have seen the production. That's not to say that the Cowboys did not get better, because they did get better. In this trade, the Cowboys do get a receiver with legitimate downfield speed that will open up the offense a little bit. Yeah, he'll probably be inconsistent, but at least he'll be a weapon that they can use. He does not have the greatest hands. He's an okay route runner. He does have good athleticism. He's fast. He's quick. He can get open in that way. But it's going to be interesting, because I would think if Cooper was being traded to the Saints or the Rams or the Patriots or one of the elite offenses in the NFL, I'd say, yes, Amari Cooper is going to succeed. He's going to bounce back in his NFL career. But because the Cowboys don't have the most elaborate offense, because they don't have great coaching, I don't know if Amari Cooper is really going to be able to succeed more than he has in Oakland. So it's a very interesting situation. The Cowboys are going for it, that's for sure. And again, you always have to bring up that first-round picks are never guaranteed themselves. You never know what you're going to get in a first-round pick. It sounds sexy, but you never truly know what you're going to get there. So it's a very interesting trade. It's interesting that he, at 21 and 22 years old, were able to get 1,000-yard seasons with the Raiders and looking like a promising young receiver. And all of a sudden, these last 2 years has dropped off at the age of 23 and 24 when you really think he was going to really break through. Dylan, I don't know. What do you think he has to perform to? Like, what level do you think he needs to perform to? And what level do you think the team needs to perform to for you to get really to win this trade and to have success with Amari Cooper?
Well, I'm just frustrated with this organization as a whole. I mean, it just baffles my mind why they think this is the right decision going forward with the first round expectations. But if we're looking at what the stats need to be put in,
they clearly needed a receiver.
They did, but they've also shown that when they get somebody that they haven't produced. We got Allen Hurns for a 2-year contract, and he's had like 12 catches the entire season. The production has not been there on a consistent basis, even when we sign a guy. For me, we're going to be halfway through the year, so 9 games he's going to have throughout the course of the season. He just has to be consistent. I mean, even if we get 1 or 2 100-yard receiving games, I just need to see something where he can be, a 5 catches for 80.
You would have to think that Cooper needs to be a 1,000-yard receiver, if not this year, next year, for this to be a successful trade. No,
for next year, yeah. I mean, he's not going to do it in 9 games.
He has to be a pretty good player for a couple of years at least.
The thing is that it feels like this should be a long-term trade, but it just feels so short-sighted as well. It's like, okay, here we go. The Cowboys lost 3-4, and now they're focused on having to give Dak another opportunity when he's had opportunities. This team, they don't have the greatest receiving core, but they've signed guys, they've made plays, they got the players necessary, and yet it just hasn't been consistent. This team has not been consistent. You go 40 points one week and 17 the next. And now whether that's the defense, whatever, but they're not making the right plays. Amari Cooper can make the right plays, but he's got to be more consistent. Right now, if I had to grade this as a Cowboys fan, this trade is a 4. I'm not very excited about it. Yeah, no, it's low because even if he was giving up for a 4th, I'm like, okay, you didn't give up that much.
Yeah, I would have thought he would have got traded for like a 3rd or a 4th.
Like I'm okay with the fact that you.
When I saw first, I was genuinely shocked.
Like, how much we have to get, let's say the Cowboys tank, right? Let's say they don't do very well. Not tank, but they lose quite a bit of games. They go 10 losses. Not saying that's going to happen, but just follow with me. That's going to get them 8th, 9th position, maybe somewhere around there. The Raiders are going to use 3 first-round picks this year. Okay, so you've just given them that opportunity. If we had that first-round pick, you could get a star receiver then that you can, trust and rely on, or at least have the potential for. You could get somebody that you really need elsewhere. It's a huge risk in the first round. I know you said that first-round players aren't always guaranteed, but just the idea that you could have somebody like that, it's crazy. So I'm giving this a 4 right now. I'm going to give it a chance, and we'll be on here in 2 weeks to see if he does anything against the Titans. That will be his first matchup on Monday Night Football. But until that point, I just can't give that a passing grade right now.
All right, so that's our thoughts on Amari Cooper. We'll see how it works out in Dallas.